So we made it to the very end of this video series. This is going to be the last video recapping the whole trip to Israel. And part of the reason why I'm making these is so that I can remember everything that happened, because it is such a blur. It was kind of a whirlwind, even now looking back at the trip. And really, the Lord deserves all the credit and glory for all the details working out so perfectly on this trip. The weather was picture perfect. There wasn't even any rain except for the first night when we were driving from the airport to our hotel. That's the only bad weather that there was. It wasn't even too hot. It was perfect weather. The lighting was perfect for pictures and videos. And the Lord kept us all safe. He kept us all healthy. All the details, all the traveling, there wasn't any traffic. Anything that could have gone wrong pretty much didn't. It was just a blessed trip from the Lord. And so I'm thankful for His guidance and His provision for the trip, because I know there's no way we could have planned for the timing to be just right or for everyone to stay healthy and to stay safe. But there's a lot to take in from the trip. And this video in particular, I want to focus on some of the safety aspects of the trip. We were kept safe, okay? But I mentioned in, I think it was like the third video in this series, I mentioned that really the only threat to our safety was the local drivers. And that is what any good Israeli tour guide will tell you, to put your cares and your troubles at rest so that you will just not worry about safety and just enjoy the trip. That's what any good tour guide will tell you. But there's a little bit more to it than that, okay? And coming out of the trip, now I realize some of the things that happened while we were there. And while we were there, obviously, we started hearing a few things that were happening in Israel. So the local drivers are a danger, so he's right on that point. But really, the reason why they say that is so that you don't worry about the safety issues and things while you're in Israel. Because really, the Israeli tour guides over there, they are very good. They will keep you safe. They stay up to date on any news that's happening, anything that might be danger. They're just always keeping their eyes open, always staying alert and aware. So they will, if you go with an Israeli tour guide, they will do a good job of keeping you safe, okay? They will keep you out of danger. But I'm going to tell you some of the things that he did to keep us out of danger, and just to help you realize what life is even like over there in Israel. Okay, we've talked about this a little bit before. Let me just read you a few things from my phone just to tell you what happened on our trip, because I don't remember it all. So first off, our guide had to cancel our stop at Mount Gerizim, which this is in the West Bank, so Palestinian kind of territory. He had to cancel our stop at Mount Gerizim and Shechem. So we were going to go to those two sites. It's like the biblical Sychar. It's Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal, where the blessing and curses were pronounced, where Christ met the woman at the well. Those significant sites, we were not able to go there because there was a shooting a day or two before we were supposed to go, maybe a couple days before we were supposed to go. Then because of that shooting, and what it was some Israeli special forces going in there and hunting down terrorists. Okay, so it wasn't like shooting innocent people. It was actually an operation by the Israeli military. They went in there because of that shooting and the ruckus that happened there. Rockets, of course, were fired from Gaza into Ashkelon, and that was about a week after we were in Ashkelon. So it's not an exciting thing. It's not like fun and games. This is real life for Israelis over there. And so that happened a week after we were there. And there was also a shooting at Jericho, I believe a few days after we left Jericho. Okay, so that's enough excitement for one trip right there, but I'm not done. The whole time we were in Jerusalem, our guide wore his backpack, which he wore that here and there anyways, but he told us that the reason why he always wore a backpack in Jerusalem, which by the way, he's from Jerusalem, that's where he lives, but he said he always wears a backpack because of the stabbings that happen in Jerusalem. And at first I actually laughed because I thought he was joking. But he made it very clear that he was not joking. He was serious. That's a part of life for the Jews in Jerusalem, in their capital city, is that there have been stabbings there. And while we were at the Damascus gate, actually, the very day that we were there, there was a stabbing. At least that's what we heard from some sources. So more than likely a stabbing at the Damascus gate in Jerusalem the very day we were there. And actually, there was a couple exciting things that happened at the Damascus gate. While we were there, I'll show you this clip. First off, you can see we're just sitting here eating lunch. But while we're there eating lunch, we kind of figured out that this is probably not the best spot for tourists. Okay, and you can see there's a couple of soldiers back here. They were talking to a bunch of guys, maybe in their 20s, and the guys were giving the two police a hard time, and so they eventually left. But right after this video was taken, there was a group of teenagers, Palestinian teenagers, that came down and kind of started heckling us. Like they were talking to us, getting all up in our face, maybe 4 or 5 of them. They kind of surrounded us while we're sitting there eating lunch, trying to ignore them, and they were talking to us, and they acted like they were trying to take some of our things, like our water bottles. They pulled my glasses off, my sunglasses, and one of them like gave me like a light kick. And we all kind of stood up and started like making our way out of there. But the teenagers more than likely were just messing around and just playing. But you can get harassed if you go to the wrong area in Jerusalem at the wrong time. And actually, if you go around the south side of the old city, Jerusalem, there's a whole neighborhood over there that we found out you shouldn't go around. It's called Silwan, and apparently the Arabs there, the local Arabs, are known to throw rocks at tourists, and they just don't really like foreigners, they don't really like visitors. So we actually found that out because we found it out after a free day that we were given in Jerusalem, that we did not have our Jewish guide, which I do not recommend, okay? So that probably should never happen, just to have a free day in Jerusalem without a tour guide, but that's just my opinion. But we found that out the next day, and really, if you're inside of that neighborhood, the Arab neighborhood of Silwan, you really probably shouldn't stay where you are. You should probably keep moving. And anyways, we got some nice footage from that area, so you can kind of see a little bit of the neighborhood. And yeah, you can see the valley and the area. Beautiful area on that south side there, and you can see the Mount of Olives. But just beware that that's not a neighborhood that you want to spend much time around. You want to keep moving. Really, just being in Israel on the ground, it felt like we were always on the brink of World War III, just breaking out. Because, of course, if you follow the news at all, you know about Iran, and then Syria, and then there's Hezbollah in Lebanon, and all the trouble that they're trying to stir up in Israel during the political unrest, really taking advantage of that situation. And then, of course, in the West Bank, then you have Hamas in the Gaza area. Terrorism literally surrounding Israel, all at their doorstep, really, all their neighboring countries. And then it spreads out even farther than that to Russia, North Korea, and China. All these enemies that Israel has, and really, not to be the bearer of bad news, but a regional war is inevitable. It's going to happen at some time, either to preempt a nuclear threat or in response to a nuclear threat, or maybe the nuclear threat is going to initiate the attack. So there's going to be a regional war in Israel. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. And really, first off, that can affect, if you're planning a trip to go to Israel, that can affect tourism. It might even stop tourism. It might even fully just cancel trips, which that would be sad. That would be heartbreaking. So if you're planning on going to Israel, you need to really pray and watch the news on these things and be informed, but you really need to pray that your trip does not get canceled, because that is a possibility. And I'm not making predictions or anything here. I'm just, from where I'm at, I'm making this video on March 20th. I don't know what day it's going to get posted. Just ignore that the calendar says February. But really, even more significant than the tourism being affected by this conflict that keeps going on and it's not getting any better, more important than that is that innocent lives in Israel are going to be endangered whenever this regional war, whenever this conflict finally breaks out. Because the conflict, this is really, it's still war going on, but it's just not officially been declared. Okay, there's attacks, there's terrorism. Really, when this war breaks out, it's going to really pose a threat to all the innocent people who live in Israel. And really, that is one of my greatest takeaways from the entire trip, is the need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. That is such a real need. After being in Jerusalem, after seeing the conflict going back and forth, even being part of a couple, little dust up with some Palestinian teenagers, you can feel conflict just being over there. And the biblical command to pray for the peace of Jerusalem is so much more real to me now. So I want to share that with you so that you will pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Because the conflict over there, the violence isn't going away, and it's going to escalate. And I'm glad we got to go when we did, because I don't know how much longer things are going to stay the way that they are over there. But beside all that, we need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And I wanted to close out the video today by reading Psalm 122, which says, "A song of degrees of David. I was glad when they said unto me, Let us go into the house of the Lord. Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is builded as a city that is compact together. Whither the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, unto the testimony of Israel, to give thanks unto the name of the Lord. For there are set thrones of judgment, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. Peace be within thy walls, and prosperity within thy palaces. For my brethren and companions' sake I will now say, Peace be within thee. Because of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek thy good." So let's remember to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and to seek the good of Israel however we can in our prayers, by visiting, by supporting them, by loving them, because they are God's people. And God blesses them, and God blesses anyone who also blesses them.